Welcome again. This is our usual conversation on active imagination and something we've spoken about active imagination and well-being, active imagination and music. And we wanted to welcome you again to our discussion. And from one of our last conversations, we ended up on active imagination and the song Amazing Grace emerged, which is just what you just heard David play. And David so brilliantly did on his flute. And we thought, why don't we have a little discussion on active imagination and the eyes? I would say I was blind, but now I see. That line caught our attention. David had been mentioning to me that in the ancient days, wise men were usually the blind ones who others sought their counsel to find out what was it that was happening to the nation and the society. I thought it exciting because I'm visually impaired, I'm blind, and I thought the discussion amazing. I would like to invite the gentleman to share along the way what I came to remember was during my own work with blind persons. One of the persons who worked with me in an interview told me, I know this may sound pretty strange to you, and it may sound like a contradiction of sorts, but when I was sighted, I was blind. When I was sighted, I was blind. And I'll never forget this. And she said, well, since my physical eyes no longer work, I've been discovering so many other parts of me and so many other skills, sense of touch, sense of observation, sense of balance, sense of design, so many other things that she's discovering. And of course, most people would say, my God, how do you do without eyes? But it's just one of the things that came to mind. There's a larger way of seeing. One friend told me the brain still sees. See, there's an inner seeing, a spiritual being, a mind seeing that probably David and Rodney would probably catch us upon. But that topic, this is a matter of interest, David. What do you think, and Rodney?
Well, it makes me think of a line from a passage that says, there are none uh, so blind who will not see, and so rather than those who cannot see. So, individuals oftentimes are blinded by uh, not the physical sense per se, but by their own mental and emotional blindness, that their inability to see uh, beyond um, the other people's perspectives, uh, the worldview of others, and so we get stuck in our own belief systems, our own mindset. We become very selfish. We're a very selfish me society. And we don't consider the uh, welfare of society in general. And so, oftentimes we focus specifically on our own personal needs. And so, therefore, we're blinded to what is happening with other individuals. We're dealing a lot with that now in the world. There's a lot of great suffering within the world, and the collective consciousness is in pain. But we refuse to see that because we are blinded by our own self-interest. We're blinded by money. We're blinded by a lot of issues, and so therefore, really this whole experience of the world, the visual piece really is small compared to those things that we can't see. Those things that we can't see are so vast and so great that we can't even begin to even understand that. And so I would contend that really what we're seeing visually for those of us that are sighted is really very limited. That really what we cannot see from a spiritual sense is much more vast than anything that we can ever uh, imagine. And so once we begin through active imagination to get beyond that physical and go within and open up that inner world to explore that inner world, through meditation, song definitely takes us to a different, I call it the ethereal, take us to that ethereal plane. And so that's that opportunity that we have through active imagination to be able to turn within, close out the outside world that's very short-sighted, that's very limited in what we can experience and what we can see. And so those seers of old that we talk about, that while they may have been physically blinded, had the ability to turn within, to use their spiritual abilities and expand upon that. And so again, I think active imagination allows us an opportunity to explore these particular inner worlds that we know very little about. So that's my take on uh, what what you just asked, Stein.
And what I've been thinking about that song for the last few years is that what really is needed is an amazing grace moment, because that the idea of I once was lost but now I'm found, I was blind but now I see. The now, what happened in the now, in the moment for that person who wrote the song, was they actually had some kind of insight into themselves, or they looked at their whole life and what they were doing, and they realized that what they were doing is wrong. So that person who wrote the song was a slave trader. He was selling African slaves in the West, and in America, and then he realized that he wanted to be an abolitionist. He started fighting against slavery, and so that was like a real turnaround. In other words, he had some insight into what he was doing. It was what he was doing was wrong, and he changed his heart. He changed his morality. He changed his whole view towards the world, and that probably took him a lot of courage to do that. But he was inspired by some spiritual knowledge that he felt like he was finally going to do the right thing. He was blind, but now he could see. And so I've been thinking a lot in the last few years, if we had some of these multi-billionaires, if they had an amazing grace moment and they realized that selling weapons to kill people and burning up the planet with dirty oil, that these things are not right, that what they should be doing is trying to heal the world and help people, bring people together and create peace and love and prosperity, rather than the mess that we're looking at now. So, and really this could be for all people. Now maybe we're not on the level of slave traders, or we're not, certainly not on the level of multi-billionaires, but all of us could have a role to play in the healing of the planet. And maybe what these times are calling for is for all good people to come to the aid of their planet, for all of us to look within and have these kind of transformative moments where we get inspiration and courage, and we feel like we know something that we can each do to contribute towards the well-being of the whole. So it's not just all selfish, but it's all, it's all helping people, and it's part of us coming together and healing the planet as a united humanity. And so I told a person I know today who lost their job to think about some of these people like Buddha and then Jesus, these great teachers in the history of humanity. They just went out into the world with nothing. They didn't worry about paying their rent or having a car or a computer or a phone or anything. They just went out with nothing, themselves and their heart and their mind and their teachings, and they tried to spread goodness and love throughout the planet. And those people made a huge impact without having a penny, without firing a shot, without having a penny in the bank, without any of that stuff. But we maybe all need to make some kind of shifts to meet this moment in history. And maybe the active imagination is one way of looking at yourself and seeing what are your gifts, what really is within you, what is your best self, and what do you have to offer. So that slave trader who wrote Amazing Grace, he had some resources he could put behind publications and speaking and doing things to help the abolitionist movement. Now, of course, he did that in the context of a broader movement in the society, a lot of poor people, all kinds of people, rich, poor, every kind of people who thought slavery was wrong. And just like now, if there's many, many people who think burning up the planet is wrong, and killing people in senseless wars just for money is wrong, if all this is wrong, and what we want is healing, and we want to protect the plants, the animals, the sky, the water, each other, if we want a place to be paradise and live in peace and raise a family and live and die in harmony, that's all possible, but we have to make up our minds, and we have to want to do it. And so these kind of moments might be great for everybody.
There is a goodness that seems to emerge out of all of this, whatever one does. The songwriter came upon this almost like an epiphany, a burst of consciousness. My God, what am I doing trading in black skins? And it was becoming unjustifiable. It was unfair. It was brutal. It was murderous. It was genocidal. Those were not the right things to do. But he too was caught in a storm and cried for his own life and went down into his holdings and penned this particular. He had a burst of consciousness. It's an awareness. Now, somebody may say, what does it have to do with me? Well, you too, not because you've been transshipping slaves or doing anything wrong, but you could sit somewhere quietly and slowly begin to realize that that capacity for a burst of consciousness is in you. It may also be that you have a particular experience. Something happens and you become aware of this opening up. Your thoughts are flowing better. You are speaking better. Your feelings are not hurting or disrupting you. Your emotions are leading to intelligent solutions. It's an opening up, an awareness, but you need to relax yourself, and this is the active imagination exercise. And as a person who is blind, and I do not see on the outside, but I discovered that if you do not see, well, I used to say, oh my God, if I cannot see on the outside, I must be able to do something on the inside, which is a nice bit of logic there. And so I took to looking on the inside, having all that I had learned from a meditation practice since 1983. I have always been looking in that direction. And I discovered that, my God, I have a heart. And that heart is a beautiful place. And it has a beat also. And I realized, there's some breath in my body. It's the first thing that I take in when I emerge from my mother's womb and I cry out. And it's the last thing that a man or woman gives up whenever they're about to die. What is significant about this breath in you? Do you want to become aware of it? That is a departure from blindness. You've given up that idea of not wanting to see. And in the ancient of days, particularly among the Greeks, and I would imagine among the Africans before them, that is to see was to know. In the Vedas of India, it is also true. The great wise men then thought that when you saw it, you knew it. Interestingly, um, Jesus Christ also said that faith comes by hearing. So what is it? And Albert Einstein says imagination is greater than knowledge. So what are we into? Are we into periods of uncertainty? Yes. Should uncertainty frighten us? Not at all. It should thrill us, because it means this is a new science. We are entering a new paradigm. Something fundamental is happening. It's a principle of uncertainty. We're not seeing where next we're going, but we're sure that we're moving in the right direction in terms of making decisions, in terms of making plans. Oh, these corporations can do a lot with this quantum knowledge. So this idea of not seeing and what happens to people who are blind, I am of the view that it has to be tapped act as a resource where they're allowed to say exactly what they're experiencing. And let us see if we can make some sense out of it, because there is something on the inner plane that is of significance to human progress and development.
Well, that sounds like a whole topic there for a whole other discussion for another for another day, and it could sound like a life mission as well. You know.
Oh my gosh, David. So are you going to play us, Rodney? Should he play us a little flute or something?
Sure, I think
Yeah.
it's a
We can
good
finish
time.
up. Maybe I'll finish up with that same song. Listen again.
Wow. Rodney, I take us out of this particular discussion, but just look at what a simple song can do. But it's not a simple one, actually. It was at the heart of a slave trade.
Yes, yes, the power of song and music to soothe the beast inside of us all, and the use of active imagination to once again to soothe our um, some would say our wretched souls, and to bring about a sense of calm. So, to our audience, this is Dr. Rodney Penniman, Dr. David Sarnoff, and Dr. Steinberg Henry, wishing you all a very active imagination.
Looking forward to next time.
Excellent.